My mother-in-law thought she was delivering the ultimate public humiliation when she handed me a thick manila envelope right in the middle of the annual army ball. With a smirk that could curdle milk, she looked at my dress uniform and said, "Sign these, or we ruin your military career tonight." My husband stood right behind her, pulling out his phone to record my utter collapse for their entertainment. The entire ballroom went dead silent as generals, high-ranking officers, and my own unit watched. But as I opened that envelope, my mother-in-law's smirk vanished into pure horror. She didn't realize that the woman she'd spent 3 years belittling wasn't just an army wife, and the man she was trying to protect was about to lose far more than a marriage. Follow my story until the end, and comment below which city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Clara Vance. At 28 years old, I've learned that some people wear their cruelty like a family crest. For 3 long years, my mother-in-law, Eleanor, treated me like an unwanted stray that her son had dragged home. To her, my simple background and dedicated military service weren't sources of honor. They were embarrassments to her wealthy, high-society circle. She made a sport out of subtle put-downs, passive-aggressive remarks about my appearance, and reminder after reminder that I would never truly belong in the Vance family estate. My husband, Mark, made everything worse. Instead of standing up for me, he slowly dissolved into his mother's shadow. As his own vague business ventures began to falter, he relied entirely on Eleanor's financial support, transforming from the supportive partner I once knew into a loyal soldier in her war against me. I tried to hold our marriage together, believing that patience and love would eventually bridge the gap. What I didn't know was that behind closed doors, Eleanor was orchestrating my quiet removal. Mark was set to inherit a massive family trust fund on his 30th birthday, and Eleanor was utterly determined that not a single cent of that money would ever touch my hands. She began plotting a way to force me out of the marriage, carefully setting a trap that would not only end our union, but obliterate my reputation and my career in one fell swoop. The tension reached its boiling point as the annual Army Ball approached, the most prestigious event on our military calendar. It was an evening where commanders, high-ranking officers, and distinguished guests gathered in full dress uniform. To my surprise, Eleanor suddenly insisted on attending. She framed it as a gesture of family support, claiming she wanted to stand by her daughter-in-law's side. In reality, she and Mark were coordinating a carefully staged ambush, choosing the grandest stage possible to publicly humiliate me in front of my superiors and ruin my military standing. Hours before the ball, the warning signs began to surface. I noticed Mark acting strangely erratic, whispering on hushed phone calls and frantically hiding private financial documents whenever I walked into his home office. My instincts, honed by years of military training, told me something was deeply wrong. A quick glance at his desk revealed frantic text exchanges with a high-profile divorce attorney, along with references to contracts I was never supposed to see. They thought I was walking blindly into a trap, but they had severely underestimated who they were dealing with. The grand ballroom of the Hilton was filled with polished brass, dark green dress uniforms, and the hum of high-ranking officers in deep conversation. Generals, commanders, and my entire unit were in attendance, making the room feel alive with military tradition. I stood near the head table in my formal dress uniform, holding a glass of sparkling water, when Eleanor made her grand entrance. Clad in a silk gown that practically screamed old money, she marched across the floor straight toward me, her heels clicking loudly against the polished hardwood. The conversations around us slowly died down as people noticed her aggressive stride. Without a word of greeting, she pulled a thick manila envelope from her designer purse and slammed it against my chest, letting out a voice loud enough to command the attention of the entire room. She accused me of being a gold digger, claiming I was using her son for his family name and security. Right behind her, Mark stepped forward, pulling out his smartphone and aiming the camera directly at my face. He had a smug, cruel grin, recording every second to catch my breakdown for their entertainment. They expected me to sob, to panic, and to crumble in front of my commanding officers. Instead, the room went completely silent as every pair of eyes locked onto us. I didn't cry, nor did I flinch. Instead, I calmly adjusted my glasses, opened the manila envelope, and began reading through the legal jargon with methodical precision. Eleanor's triumphant grin started to waver as the tearful breakdown she had staged failed to materialize. What she and Mark had completely failed to grasp was that I wasn't just an army wife in a sharp uniform. I was a senior audit officer within the military's Financial Oversight Division, holding high-level security clearance. For months, my department had been quietly tracking massive financial discrepancies tied to defense vendor contracts. While going through Mark's hidden files hours earlier, every piece of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. Mark had committed widespread corporate fraud, using forged military logistics contracts to cover his mounting business debts. Eleanor knew the investigation was closing in, and she desperately believed a quick, hostile divorce would allow them to invoke spousal privilege and shield Mark's illegal dealings behind marital privacy laws. Their arrogant public display wasn't just about cruelty. It was a panicked attempt to ruin my credibility before I could officially report him. They thought they were backing a helpless victim into a corner, completely unaware that they had just handed me the final key to their destruction. A slow, calm smile spread across my face as I pulled a pen from my jacket pocket. Without uttering a single complaint, I signed every single page of the divorce papers right there on the table. Eleanor's jaw practically dropped in shock. She had expected a desperate plea, not my absolute compliance. As I handed the signed packet back to her, I looked past her shoulder toward the back entrance of the ballroom and gave a subtle nod. On my signal, 2 uniformed military police officers and a senior judge advocate general attorney marched purposefully across the room, their heavy boots echoing against the floorboards. The triumphant look on Mark's face instantly vanished, replaced by sheer panic as the officers surrounded him and his mother. By signing those papers on the spot, I had officially severed our marriage, completely waiving any spousal privilege or marital privacy protections they were desperately relying on. The JAG attorney stepped forward, unrolling a stack of official federal warrants for corporate fraud, wire fraud, and grand embezzlement. Eleanor stood frozen, her face draining of all color as she realized her elaborate trap hadn't broken me. It had legally unsealed the investigation that would ruin them both. The click of the handcuffs echoed sharply in the silent ballroom as the MPs secured Mark's wrists behind his back. The smartphone he had been using to record my public shame slipped from his trembling hands, landing face up on the floor, its camera still rolling, now recording his own arrest for his mother's high society friends to see. Eleanor shrieked in horror, pleading with the officers and dropping her cold composure entirely, but her desperate protests were brushed aside. Her public standing was utterly shattered in a matter of seconds. Within 48 hours, federal authorities froze all of Eleanor's personal and corporate bank accounts due to her active complicity in Mark's contract fraud. The story of their public humiliation at the Army Ball quickly spread through their elite social circles, leaving them isolated and disgraced. Mark was forced to face severe legal penalties and potential federal prison time, completely stripped of the family trust fund he had spent his entire life waiting for. 3 months later, I officially transferred to a brand new post near the coast, stepping into a senior leadership role within military oversight. Walking through the sunlit hallways of my new command, I felt a deep sense of peace that I hadn't known in years. I was completely unburdened by toxic family drama, standing tall on my own accomplishments, and surrounded by colleagues who genuinely respected my work. Now, I'm curious about your thoughts. What would you have done if someone tried to humiliate you in front of your peers like that? Did Eleanor and Mark get the ending they deserved, or was I too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.